Yowzers. It is a straight-up filament fest. We've got a filament down here in the southwest becoming unstable. That's the Dan Nigro filament. Shout out to Zach Toven for naming that one. Huge filament that we streamed all day yesterday up here in the northeast. So lots of exciting stuff going on. Some additional sunspot growth in the southern hemisphere. We'll get to it. Look at the filamentary activity. It is spectacular. Here's what's going on in the northeastern limb. By the way, I'm your host, Dan, a.k.a. Smash-A-Mash, coming at you from the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. Just bringing you the most detailed imagery of the sun and most comprehensive space weather you'll find the world over. So let's take a look at our traditional filament fest wavelengths. This is 304 plus 193 angstroms from SDO. And yeah, lots of gigantic filaments, including that prominence in the northeast. Also this one looking like it's just about to eject as we stream the video live. So let's go around the horn here. Here's this incredible prominence. A bunch of plasma relocating there, not liking where it was. It decided to get closer to this recently risen sunspot group. And we'll show you even more detailed imagery on that later in the video. Here is your northwestern limb. Filaments all around. This view includes the Dick Van Dyke filament. Yes, we're naming filaments after living people. And this one's been named after me, and check it out, is in the process of ejecting as we speak. Will it crash back down toward the chromosphere, or will it end up blasting off into space? Let us know in the comments what you think. Dag, that is some spectacular imagery from SDO. Next, the southeastern limb. And let's take a look at sunspots. So we did have another group form down here. That's a new sunspot group. So that'll get a name today. Sunspot number should rise a little bit as there are some groups here that haven't been named as well. So still well over 100 sunspots. That is what you call an active star. So thanks for leaving a comment, Tinman1057. Here is the colorized magnetogram from SDO. And let's take a look at volcanoes and earthquakes briefly before we get back to space. So if you want to know what's erupting in terms of volcanoes, I sure am. And Semeru is on the list, which is what is being shown there. That photo, that is Semeru's eruption. And here's your rundown. Stromboli continues to erupt. No ash cloud produced from Stromboli. Semeru producing not a very big ash plume there, but Vulcanian-style eruptions continue to take place. 500-meter ash plume. Popocatépetl exploding, flight level 220. That's a 22,000-foot ash plume. Keep in mind that's 22,000 feet above sea level. Not the full size of the ash plume. That's the top at 22,000 feet. Flight level 220. Flight level 160 over Fuego in Guatemala. It's a 15,500-foot ash plume over Fuego. Nevado del Ruiz exploding. Flight level 220 in Colombia. Ecuador features Sangay exploding. Flight level 190. Flight level 140 from Revenador as it explodes. Also Cotopaxi. So 3 active ash plume producing volcanoes there in the country of Ecuador. Flight level 220 over Cotopaxi. It's a 22,000-foot ash plume there as well. Sabancaya unable to detect. Don't assume it's not erupting. Last but not least in Chile, Villarrica. Strombolian activity continuing there. And let's go to earthquakes. There is the 90-day bar graph, and it's actually seismicity activity level is a little bit higher here than it's showing. It has not been updated yet to reflect this most recent quake. A 6+ magnitude quake there in the eastern Caribbean, south of the Isle of Montserrat. There is a location of that. I believe it was a 6.2. way out in the eastern Caribbean. And that one was at a depth of over 160 kilometers, estimated depth there. That 6.2 magnitude quake came in at 11:23 Universal Time, as we are a little bit late doing the show today. And let's scroll up the list to report anything over a 5 magnitude, like this 5.0 at Guam. That one at 120 kilometers estimated depth. And a bunch of quakes there on the California coast, it looks like. None of a high enough magnitude for us to report, but there was a 5.0 at Tonga. That one was at the surface, estimated depth of 10 kilometers. Also, we've got a Japanese quake there. That was a 5.0. And let's get back to space. But first, as we don't want to be too spaced out on the channel after all, let's talk about some basics. Have you checked out the merch shop? If you click the link below the video, you'll find our merch shop in order of best selling. You may agree or disagree with the views expressed on the merch. Some of the merch was specifically requested by our viewers, if you weren't aware. Today's featured product is Mensa, Make Earth Not Suck Again. It's up to you, and I'm wearing the hat. So, and let me just take a moment to show off the hat. Yeah, it stands for Make Earth Not Suck Again. Why? Because the way to get out of a hole, folks, the way to get out of a hole is to stop digging. So, I don't know how you're going to make Earth great again, which is a mega idea. I don't know how you're going to make Earth great again until you stop making it suck. So, yeah, the path to making Earth great is making it not suck. And if you've noticed, it's 2023. Do you remember what occurred in March of 2020? Have you seen any accountability since then? Seriously, have you seen any accountability since March 2020? Any at all among anybody who's crippled the world economy and caused untold suffering, the likes of which haven't been seen since World War II? I certainly haven't. If you enjoy the content, by the way, press like and subscribe on YouTube. Thanks to our YouTube subscribers for tolerating the pathetic, putrid, and disgusting censorship on the platform. Check out our playlists if you haven't. If you haven't heard the 12 Days of Smashmas, we released free music under our Golden Cat Productions label for the first 12 days of December. Also, you can find playlists about gaming, interviews, and shout-outs. You can find some of our alarmist/fear-mongering fake news weather reports. Terms defined. Smashomash.org presents The Sun and more. If you want to support the channel, become a patron. Or better yet, join us on our own subscription services site, smashomash.com/smashteam. So make sure you log in. If you're not logged in, by the way, make sure you log in to smashomash.com/smashteam. Otherwise, you might not see the latest alerts. So we do send out email alerts and so on at smashomash.com/smashteam. You can also find our links there. Check out the Hemp Lucid shop and more. Visit us on social media. Let us know what you're up to. And thanks to all of our Smash Team members. Again, make sure you log in, and you can see our posts even if you don't log in. We often send out email alerts about our basic videos so people know when they come out. Links to that on the homepage at smashomash.com. Help us out with clicks by joining us on the interwebs. Smashomash.com. Welcome to the Neo Renaissance. It's our homepage. And let's take a look at that filament in the northeast. Also some plasma reorientation or perhaps a coronal mass ejection happening right there from this massive sunspot group. Flaring has been kind of minimal, so no major flares here. There's 171 plus 131 angstroms. And let's blast through lots more information as there's plenty more to cover. The 10.7 centimeter radial flux has dropped down to 219 solar flux units. I don't care what Zarkova says about it. It's not a grand solar minimum. Solar flux units are 10,000 joules of radial flux density. There's the 1 year graph to put it in context. The 10.7 centimeter radial flux is represented by this black line. The sunspot number is represented by the red line. And perhaps you can see how proportional they are. Indeed, radial flux and sunspot number are directly proportional aspects of solar activity. We don't see any space weather storms or geomagnetic unrest here forecasted by NOAA. I would tend to disagree here, as I expect a CME impact on the 22nd by midday, mid to late day on the 22nd. So sometime after 12 o'clock universal time, expect a minor CME impact. Could cause a KP4 or 5 event. A minor geomagnetic storm could be possible from it. So we'll be keeping you posted on that. Let's take a look at the KP index, which is at 0.67. So it's not quite a KP0, which we just came off of. So a little bit of an increase there in the solar wind parameters. Let's take a look at the last 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from space. So there's what's going on with Earth's magnetohydrodynamic pressure. The past 4 hours out to about 12 Earth diameters, and here's Earth's magnetic moment from the ground, showing you Earth's magnetic poles. It'll show you the most likely places to see the aurora, pipeline, railway, and power line induction. Geospace delta B, changes to Earth's B field over the past 4 hours. Next, the real-time solar wind. And what do we have here? Looks like some missing data. The last data to show up was solar wind density quite low here, 2.6 protons per cubic centimeter. Solar wind speed slowing down at 393 kilometers per second. A bunch of missing data there and switches from one instrument to the other. You can see a switch from the Discover to the ACE was the most recent switch here. Right there at the bottom, you can see the blue line turns green. That's a switch from the Discover to the ACE, measuring the solar wind at Lagrangian point 1. Next, we brought up the 7-day chart here for the GOES magnetometers because we're seeing a tighter range for the past 3 days. See this little tighter range here where we're seeing lower highs and higher lows for the GOES magnetometers. We usually show the 3-day chart. Again, that's the 7-day chart. And let's take a look at the heliospheric current sheet next. And almost the entire north solar polar field is oriented toward the Earth at the moment. South solar polar field at the opposite side of the sun. And let's take a look at the line of sight field plot. Solar B field depicted here in blue, north solar polar field in green, south solar polar field in red. And we got lots of sunspots here just rotating past the Earth-facing zone into the west. 2 major sunspot groups quite close to the equator, despite it being so early in the solar cycle. And let's move to sunspots. Let's move to coronal holes. So, yeah, there you go. There's your line of sight coronal hole field plot. And we still do have a South Pole-oriented coronal hole here at the South Solar Polar region, and the same thing with the north. So, let's take a look at that from SDO, as it's one significant, well-defined trans-equatorial coronal hole. Those are the most geo-effective kind. And we can expect to see a high-speed solar wind from that in about 4 to 5 days. So this is all North Pole magnetism. This is North Pole, this is South Pole. Which means the solar cycle's got a long way to go, because this field has got to make it all the way up to the north, where they will remain confined for like a year or so during solar minimum, which is a long, long way off. We're still a long way off from solar maximum for that matter. And let's move to sunspots. People have been counting them for hundreds of years. And here's the current state of affairs. I'll just say there are lots, including at least one group that's not named yet. I guess this group down here is already named. That looks like it's called 3188, is it? All right. That's already got a name. Fair enough. This group here does not have a name yet. We'll have at least one more named sunspot group. I thought it was going to be like 3. But in any case, that's the current situation. So let's take a look at that from SDO. We've included 131 angstroms to show you the most active spots, which are these actually right here. And we haven't seen any major flares in the past 24 hours, but those have produced some significant intensifications. And let's subtract the 131 angstroms wavelength here to just show the sunspots. So we'll have at least one, I think maybe two new named sunspot groups. As I believe these 2 sunspots here, those will be separate groups, I think. They are at significantly different latitudes. And let's move to energetic particles and solar flares. Again, we've got a CME popping off as we make the video, so we're going to try to speed things up here to get this thing onto your screens. And thanks for tuning in, by the way. Once again, thanks for tuning into the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. We're pretty spaced out, and we're glad to see that you are as well. So that's what's going on in terms of the proton flux. No relativistic particles there showing up and causing polar radio blackouts. It's chilling as far as the proton flux goes. X-ray flux here kind of just, it actually came up a little bit yesterday, and then it came back down. So the background level is kind of around like a C1.67 X-ray output. Pretty weak here at the moment, especially considering how many sunspots they are underperforming a bit. Don't be surprised to see M or even X-class flares. Also keep in mind there's a huge plasma bridge likely suspended by these enormous sunspot groups. It's not really visible because there's no contrast. That thing is pointed directly at you, Earthlings. So yeah, that's the last 24 hours from SDO 94 angstroms wavelength, and many different potential spots to see large flares. And we can expect to see this filament ejecting throughout the day today. So we'll be covering that also on the Twitch channel. And let's take a look up. This is what's going on over our heads at Lehigh Valley. So the sun just about to rise. Let me just press now. There we go. It's getting light out, and we've got Mercury and a very, very thin crescent moon there in the southeastern sky. As we approach new moon, let's do a solar system forecast. Here's where bodies are now. Let's advance it 1 week. Here's where it'll be in a week on the 27th. We're 2 days from new moon. Shout out to all my reverse werewolves. And let's take a look at coronagraph. So we've got some relativistic particles striking the coronagraph there. You can see all those rectangular dots. Those are relativistic particles. They didn't make it to Earth, or if they did, they didn't make it down to a low enough altitude to reach the GOES satellites. But they certainly did reach Lagrangian point 1. That's 85 frames from yesterday, January 19th. And let's show today. There have been some CMEs, which we'll have to analyze here. That's 27 frames from today, the 20th. And let's take a look at some more in-depth information here from Stereo A located at Lagrange 5 and Soho Lasco C3 at Lagrange 1. So we paused it here at 2138 for the Stereo A and 2142 for Soho Lasco C3 because we got this interesting, it's like a double CME. You've got these 2 bright spots here which look like they're opposing each other. Perhaps some repulsive forces happening there with respect to the plasma, but in any case, we paused it there to show you that that is not earthly directed. That is well off to the northwest. So that's one CME that was sort of in the realm of possibly being earthly, but not really. So again, we can expect a CME strike mid to late day on the 22nd. But as far as any additional CME strikes headed our way, not looking like that's a thing. So we'll let that play through for you, and then we'll show you some 24-hour coronagraphs. Please pay attention to the time and date stamps there at the bottom. Those are not synced. 90 frames for each, though. So here is the 24-hour view. That's why it's called the daily space weather, because most of our custom videos are 24 hours in length. Here's another 24-hour SDO plus Soho video. And there's the full zoom out. Again, none of those CMEs are likely earthly directed or having earthly components. So let's move on to filaments since we're talking about CMEs, and there's one happening as we speak. So here's the filament fest. You can see the Dan Nigro filament down here becoming unstable right at the end of the video there. That's from Udaipur, India's ground-based solar observatory, and we've got lots of filaments. So yeah, this one up here, it got named the James Comer filament. Shout out to Julie for completing the challenge on Twitter, naming that filament. And let's bring up the latest image. Actually, we're not going to say name that filament today because we're going to wait for this little reorientation to happen before we start trying to name filaments. You are invited to join us on Twitter, though. We've recently shared the share prices of certain big tech organizations. How's that censorship been working out? Well, join us on Twitter. You can find all the information about that there. A fine job you're doing, Google. A fine job. Anyway, if you do want to name filaments, join us on Twitter. So I just wanted to briefly show you this. We streamed it all day yesterday. So the evolution of the James Comer filament, which is also a prominence, by the way. A prominence is a type of filament that hangs off the limb. We streamed that all day yesterday. So great video of the evolution of that if you want some great footage or still imagery or to make animations, etc. Visit the Twitch channel at twitch.tv/smashamash. Perhaps even install the mobile app, which will actually alert you when we go live, unlike certain organizations who don't seem to be able to write software to save their you-know-whats. Anyway, just figured I would bring that to your attention. We'll be streaming it again today at twitch.tv/smashamash. So here's the last couple of hours. And yeah, the James Comer, some of that is ejecting, it looks like, but some of it is splashing back down. Now this filament down here, named after yours truly, certainly looks like it is in the process of making its way out of the corona. So that's going to be an interesting one to watch throughout the day today. And here's the last 24 hours from SDO 304 angstroms as we move to our bonus features segment. So here's bonus features. Satellite charging hazards, non-existent. It's smooth sailing. Electron flux, kind of low here. Kind of surprisingly low for the past quite a while here. We did get into warning territory there a few days ago, but we've been very low in the electron flux here for the past few days. Now, expecting an uptick here. Sure, I won't argue with that. I mean, maybe a big downtick on the 22nd when the CME impact happens, but besides that, I'm okay with it. That's the forecast model for relativistic electrons. There's the 1-year graph to put it in context for you if you're not familiar with the greater than 2 mega electron volt electron fluence. It's measured at the F ionosphere layer by those two geosynchronous satellites, it goes 16 and goes 18. So let's take a look at the vibrational frequency of that slice of the atmosphere. So the F ionosphere layer is the bridge between Earth and space in many ways. With respect to what it's like at sea level, it is space, as you would have a bit of trouble breathing there. It is quite vacuum-like, and most of the particles are ionized, hence the term ionosphere. Anyway, that's the vibrational frequency of it, and it is full of anomalies, which continue as we continue to cover facts on the channel. So here's the anomalygram. If you're not familiar with looking at the raw vibrational frequency, there it is. And massive anomalies continue. Massive oddities like the movement of the South Atlantic anomaly into the South Pacific and the South African anomaly moving up to the north central portion of Africa, around the equator now, actually the South African anomaly, sort of by the west coast, right near where the west coast of Africa meets the equator. And the South Pacific anomaly is somewhere south of 30 degrees south latitude there, down here in the Pacific Ocean. If you weren't aware of it, it's probably because you don't watch the channel. And if you don't watch the channel, it's probably because we're shadow banned on big tech social media sites. So for all of you who would like us to switch to Rumble or whatever, there is no alternative to Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. There is no alternative. They are monopolies. So we're not interested in switching. Even if we could make a lot of money doing it, that's not the point. The point is to advance the science. Anyway, there's the latest image, 12:15 Universal Time ionogram, 12:15 Universal Time anomalygram. We'll also show the total electron content, which is quite anomalous as well. Total electron content forecast will show you the free electrons between your GPS satellite and your handset. That's about 12,500 miles of altitude. And check out these odd bands around 55 degrees north latitude and around 70 degrees south latitude. Odd bands of low electron content, and then odd bands of very high electron content, mostly every place else except for the Caribbean, southern South America. Also some anomalies here showing up around Central Africa. So lots of GPS errors. They continue. We've been showing it for a couple of weeks here. And we can expect this to get a little bit more orderly when the electron flux rises. And very disorderly when we see a CME impact on the 22nd. Anyway, that's what's going on with your GPS errors. Expect lots of them. We'll close out the space weather section with our latest intensitygram and latest magnetogram. Here's the full-size view. We may have some activity forming down here. I see some plages showing up at incredibly high latitudes. That means close to the pole, far from the equator. And we've been seeing this as a feature for solar cycle 25 continuing, as we see sunspots at vastly different latitudes. And so these are getting very close to the equator. But then we're seeing sunspots forming very far from the equator as well. It's been a feature of solar cycle 25. And let's move on to our meteorology segment. Now, of course, we talk about the croissant-shaped Earth on the regs. And, you know, it's, to quote Seinfeld, it's funny because it's true. So I figured I would show one of the projections here that we don't normally show on the channel. That is the, allow me to vanish. This is one of the many different views that you can use on nullschool.net. And this proves that the Earth is a smiley face. So there you go. The Earth is shaped like a giant smiley face. If there were teeth, they would look like this. The Earth, it's shaped like a pizza with the crust going around the edge. That's Antarctica. Yeah. No, seriously, though. There are some different funky views that you can use here, folks, like the, what is this one called? That's the Waterman butterfly view. That should convince people of some kind of nonsense. Anyway, there's croissant Earth projected onto a spherical Adobe Photoshop image. And by the way, thanks for leaving a comment, Mike, as well. What happened? I'm lost in space. All right, so these are the surface winds of the eastern world. These are the jet streams of the eastern world. Powerful low-pressure system there in the northern Pacific. Here are the jet streams of the western world. Powerful jet stream over most of the U.S. here, and some cold air being driven into the Pacific Northwest. Here are the surface winds of this side of the planet. Here are the surface winds of the central world. And, of course, the jet streams depicted here. It's a windy day on the Mediterranean. Let's move on to show clouds and fog over the Americas. Shout out to our viewers from the east side, the west side, and from both sides of the equator. Congratulations on realizing the channel exists. I know it's an awful lot of facts. No wonder we only have 2.6 thousand subs on YouTube. Here's your weather.gov map. And yeah, there's the key. If your location is lit up on the map, just click your location at weather.gov. We've got some various types of warnings here, and today we're going to show the European forecasts. So this is the GFS forecast was not available this morning, so now we're showing the European forecast for temperature anomaly for the next 72 hours. That is in degrees Celsius, by the way. Here is the European forecast for pressure and precipitation for the next 72 hours. Here's the European forecast for total accumulated precipitation for the next 72 hours. This is, by the way, in inches, not centimeters. Some heavy rain coming to the Florida Panhandle there, according to the Euro model. Last but not least, we'll show snowfall expectations. Here's windy.com. Windy.com. Check it out. They got a great mobile app if you've never seen it. It is free. Or it doesn't cost you any cash because you're the product. It's tracking your every movement on the internet. Be very scared, folks. It's a weather app. Anyway, here's the Euro model for snowfall over the next 12 hours. And New Hampshire will be receiving the most snow of any state. There's the next 24 hours, where Vermont will join in. Also portions of upstate New York, and there are the next 3 days. That is still the Euro model, by the way. That's the Euro model for snow accumulation for the next 3 days. There's the GFS model. So only minor differences there between the Euro and the GFS. And let's continue on to close this mother out with lightning. We saw some lightning here in Pennsylvania yesterday, or early this morning. A little bit of lightning in PA, New Jersey, even the Big Apple. Likely heard some thunderclaps. And let's check a real-time lightning map to see if there are any at the moment. And it's pretty calm as far as lightning goes at the moment, at least according to lightningmaps.org. We've still got some East Mediterranean lightning happening. No terrestrial strikes in the U.S. at the moment. We'll close things out with Doppler radar, shortwave radiation, and water vapor. So here's some more real-time data for you. This is the U.S. Doppler radar map. We showed the full 50 states of also the allegedly United States of America. Now we'll show the lower 48. There's clouds and fog. And there is water vapor. Hopefully that clears things up for you. Thanks for tuning in. Here's your recap. Doppler radar systems are ground-based systems that show vertical motion of water droplets and ice crystals in the air column. 3.9 nanometer radiation satellite shows 3.9 nanometer infrared radiation, which highlights clouds and fog, by the way. And the water vapor map shows all the water vapor. And that is all the video that we've got at the moment. So thanks for tuning into the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. I've been your host, Dan, a.k.a. Smash-O-Mash, signing off. And may that solar wind be at your back. Facts stated in this video suppressed by big tech criminal organizations for your online convenience. Opinions stated in this video are not necessarily the opinions of Smash News Network, least busted name in news.